Anyone have a wonderful guess? Want to make an estimate? How much money has Christmas made, or they're estimating this year for Christmas? It is $843 billion. Clearly, Christmas is in demand. We want Christmas. We need Christmas. It's like Linus's blue blanket that he carries around wherever he goes with Charlie Brown, and that blanket is always in hand, right? It brings comfort, it's a pendency, stability, but most importantly, it brings hope. Especially when things are overwhelming, stressful, it's discouraging, or things are just broken. We are reminded of a joy that we have experienced, and we are hopeful for it in the future. And Hallmark obviously recognized this during the pandemic because they immediately started airing Christmas movies. It was March. Do you guys remember this? It was March. Think back. And it doesn't matter. It was poorly acted, predictable plots with an underwhelming budget, and we didn't care. It was about Christmas. And so we sat down and we binge watched about 12 hours a day. Hallmark made so much money off us, guys. But and there's a reason for this. It helped us feel close, and it helped us feel close to that hope. And that's clearly what the message of Christmas and the reason why we celebrate it. It's what it's all about. In fact, in the Bible, in Matthew, which is a book of the gospel, it says, "Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel," which means God with us. So every year, when you're dragged to a Christmas Eve service, and don't worry, I know who you are, we're reminded of the message that God has come close to us, to be with us, to live among us, so that he may redeem us. And Jesus sometimes feels like that, kind of like that blue blanket, right? That just makes us feel hopeful, right? I mean, certainly seems like that. I've seen us act like that before, and I think that we've all tend from time to time to treat him like that. A hopeful symbol that we drag around everywhere we go, and when we feel hopeless, we can come close to that blanket, we can suck our thumb and know that everything's going to be okay. And some of you might be like, yeah, that's what I've been saying this whole time. Is it possible that Christians use this Jesus, God with us, as a crutch? And they can't handle the reality of the world, the bleak brokenness of our state, so they cling to the idea that there's this creator out there that cares and comes close, and so that we don't have to feel alone. And let me just say to someone that's thinking like that, as a Christian, to you, I'm happy that we agree on something, that the world is in a state of bleak brokenness. But I think there's a disconnect about the understanding of what it means that God has come close to us. God has come close to us is not a proximity issue. And when we hear the words come close or with us, we often think that this means distance, right? That God was far off and he has traveled close. That I had to squint my eyes, is nearsighted, and then he just was a blur in my face. No, instead, it's the idea that it's going against the idea that he's a distant, non-participating God who is now present and active. God has always been active. And so sometimes we treat it as though it gives us something that we can just hold on to, carry around with us so that we have this ability to function in life that adds somehow value to what we already have going on. No. God has not come close in distance, but God has come close in stature. He lowers his position. In the Bible, it talks about this. It says, Jesus, who being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something that he would use to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking on the very nature of a servant and being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. And that drastically changes everything. That changes the narrative about who God is and what we get out of it. See, God with us is an overwhelming concept when we realize that it should not be. God is absolute. He's all-knowing. He's everlasting. He's indescribable, surpassing. He is an exalted being. And the Creator can never be fully comprehended by its creation. How can clay grasp the complexity of the potter? But there's a deeper question. How can the potter become like clay? And I think our pursuit to know and have an answer for everything, because that's me. I love to have answers for everything. But I think somehow it blinds us from seeing the truth that God has revealed for us that we can rest in. The question reveals the character of the type of God that we have. God has not created and then stepped back to admire. No, He has involved Himself in our brokenness. Rather than parading His eternal splendor, He arrives humbly in the same vulnerability that we did. He did not come to be served, but to serve, and He came to reconcile the sin that separates us from Him. And to do so, He has come close by lowering Himself in stature. He is a king who has left the throne so He can walk with His people. And by this, He brings understanding to what we cannot understand by becoming like us, walking with us. And so that we can relate and go through the same way that Jesus has lived so that we can understand and grasp who God is. And by the way, this message was not favored. It was not favored by religious leaders of Jesus' time. And they were appalled at such a godly man who would sit and be close to what they deemed sinners. But Jesus shared a parable with them. And it's found in Luke 15. And Luke is a gospel in the Bible. And I have printed it out for you guys, so you guys have it right here with you. I'd like to read it with you. And Jesus shares the story of the parable of the lost son. Now, a parable is something that emphasizes the truth, that it comes alongside what Jesus is the truth that He's trying to share with them. And He does this through a story. So I'll start at the top, and it says, Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. And not long after that, the younger son got together all that he had and set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. And after he spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and he hired himself out to a citizen of the country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. And he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. And when he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and I will go back to my father, and I'll say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' And so he got up and he went to his father." The father, based on that story, we know that the father has a splendid and beautiful kingdom that he has built and created. It is one that has value for the son to even inherit. And it was unheard of for the son's request to even be granted. That was just an unheard of thing. In fact, here's how it actually happens. What the son could do at that point, now that he's inherited it, he could sell it to another citizen in that country. And then what he would do at that point is that he could take the money and walk away. The person that he sold it to has to wait, though, until the father passes away, and then he can claim the land. So the bid for that sale is a lot lower than what it would be if the person could just inherit it right away. So he didn't even get what it was worth. And he took what he could and he walked off. And the son went to a distant country, causing separation from his father's guidance and care. And in that, he then squandered what was gifted to him that he did not create on his own at all. And then what happens? Life happens. He makes it lower, and then life just takes it a drop lower too. And I'm sure we've all been in a situation before with that. Why is this happening now? We were just dealing with this. And so when the distractions of his wild living brought him to an all-time low, his life went even lower. And then he began to feed with the pigs. Now, any Jewish person listening to this story at that time knows that that is the most unholy role, the lowest stature you can possibly have. And at this point, that guy is hopeless. Nobody's talking to him. And so the son has this plan. And you can almost hear it in the story where he's just starting to think through. He's practicing what he's going to say. And he says, okay, I'm going to go and talk to my father. And his plan is to seek the comforts and benefits of his father's kingdom. He knows he's never going to get back to the way that things were. But at least he could just hold on to that blanket a little bit. Grab the blue blanket and just hold on to that and then have some hope that things will be better like they maybe were before. But see, the story is not about the son. It's a false title. We think it's about the son, but it's not. It's actually about the father. It says, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, and he was filled with compassion for him. And he ran to his son, and he threw his arms around him and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I know I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and he is found. And so they began to celebrate. First, the father is waiting. He's not going about his day. And suddenly he's like, oh, I'm surprised you showed up today. No, the father is waiting. And then when he sees his son a long way off, which how on earth does he do that, right? This has been a while now. His son has been in wild living. Who knows what he looks like? But he's also been feeding with the pigs, so he's got nothing at this point. But somehow the father knows his son. The father knows his children. And so what does he do? He runs to him. And the people of the time would have understood the cultural relevance of that part of the story. Reread it and we go by fast. Oh, yeah, he just got close to him. Distance thing. No. It says that he ran to him. And a man of his stature does not run. He would have had to hold up his garments, which was revealing his skin, which was a faux pas you just do not do. But then he would also have to be in a position of his servants. See, back then, the layout of a rich man's estate would have the hillside. The highest point of the land would be where his home is. And then by the gate, at the entrance of his estate, of his kingdom, would be where's the village of the servants where they would live. And so it says that the father ran to him. He went to go to greet his son. He would have to run in front of everyone. And he would bring shame to his stature. See, the son is prepared to beg to become a servant, but he is greeted and restored as a child. The robe, the ring, the sandals, they are all items of a stature of an heir. Not a servant or a slave, but of a free man. And then the best food is a marking of a special occasion. So this story reminds us that God is with us, that he has come close, but in a way that we do not think of often. And this is not about what Jesus can add or benefit to my life. It's about the fact that it changes it. So he lowers himself to us with a purpose to restore us and bring us out of this bleak, broken state that we're in. And once that happens, everything is put into perspective. And hope is not about comfort in despair. It's about certainty that God's love for us surpasses. And that is the message of the gospel. And we should not treat it or be living it out as a proximity issue. To say, oh, I'm growing closer with God, you should just grow closer with him too, right? Grow closer. Oh, I'm getting closer with God. Oh, I feel distant from God today. God is always with us. And God has come to us. And he is pursuing a relationship with us first. And we have the ability to do the same thing in the way that we share this good news with others. And honestly, that's where kingship for us, that's where it's all about. That we want to help activate people to bring God to them, and they may see this. And so within our actions and our behavior, that we may be like our Father in heaven that demonstrates his love for us. With those that need to hear the gospel, may they be treated like friends. May they be treated like loved ones. May they be treated like relationships that they are shown this love can surpass. You know what's funny is, do you know why I'm able to share this parable with you about the lost son with you today? Yeah, it's because it's in the Bible. That's a very good answer. That's correct. But there's actually even a special reason that the book of Luke is even in the Bible. The fact that the book of Luke, which shares the gospel of Jesus Christ and shares this story here in Luke 15. And it's actually found at the beginning of Luke's letter when he begins his letter by sharing why he's even writing it. And I want to read this to you real quick. Many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those whom were the first, were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. See, so Luke is already recognizing, okay, there's other people writing these things. You could just refer to Matthew, you could refer to Mark, you can refer to John. You can check out these other ones. I don't have to write this. But instead he says this, he says, with this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things you have been taught. See, Luke chose to write the gospel for a friend, so that he may be able to have understanding and grasp who God is. Not that Luke would understand. He didn't write in a way that was just for him. He wrote it specifically for a friend. And he came close in the effort he made so that his friend might understand. And then God has orchestrated this love to bring countless others to hear and know by the power of the Holy Spirit these divine words now. Its own purpose in being written is a testimony to what the gospel is, to come close in relationship, to restore what's been lost.